What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to your Pathfinder 2nd edition preview content. Today we're looking at the blog Common Ground. That's right, guys. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, items will have varying levels of rarity. If you're liking what you're seeing, remember, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and today, this episode of your Pathfinder 2nd edition preview content was brought to you in part by Josh King. Josh, thank you so much for helping out, man. Now, let's dive in. So, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that items in Pathfinder are going to have a rarity level is Magic the Gathering. It's opening that booster pack. You're going to get a certain number of commons, a certain number of uncommons, one rare, sometimes a mythic rare, sometimes a foil mythic rare even. And the knee-jerk reaction I have to opening today's blog is that that's what the playtest is going to be. Everything becomes a World of Warcraft style random loot table. Oh, Paladin, what'd you get? A Holy Avenger? Sweet! Hey, Rogue, what you got over there? Oh, a feather token and 38 cents. Well, I mean, feather tokens are pretty good in 2nd edition with the way fall damage works, but we digress. That doesn't seem to be what's going on here. We're actually going to skip to the end of the blog first before we talk about exactly what the rarities mean to see just why, oh why, Paizo would do this to us with our precious items and loot and stuff. So we've got 3 different reasons. Pretty big quotes. Just going to dive right into them. Here we go. The first one is world building and emulating genres. Quote, first of all, your group can really alter the flavor and feel of the game by changing around the commonness of certain elements, allowing for a wide variety of genre play and settings through a relatively simple system. This is a big tool in your toolkit for world building. What would a world be like where the wizard was uncommon or where all healing magic was rare? You can create a new subgenre or setting simply by shifting around the assumptions of what elements are common, uncommon, and rare. The rarities in the playtest rulebook are meant to show a good baseline for a typical Pathfinder campaign and make for a solid default if you're not straying too far from classic fantasy. They list some various examples here, but right off the bat, yeah, I really like that. I have a GM who very often puts us in low magic settings, and that's really hard to do in Pathfinder 1st edition because one of two things is going to happen. Either A, everybody's going to roll up with a character who's magical or needs magic items to function, or B, the party can't get a hold of the big 6, and as the CR rises throughout the course of that campaign, they can't keep up with the monsters and they just die horribly. With something like Rarity, say something like all magic items are rare, suddenly you've got that low magic setting set up right out the gate. Though I don't necessarily think that needs to be codified in rules and could as easily be codified in a session 0. There are a lot of people out there who don't know what a session 0 is. There are actually, believe it or not, gonna be people coming into the Pathfinder playtest who have never picked up a D20 before in their entire life. Yeah, I know, right, shocker. And when it's right there, written out in the core book from the get-go, where everyone of every varied level of play can get their hands on it, seems good to me. Second reason we have today is mechanical diversity without cognitive overload. Quote, while some groups go for a kitchen sink approach to available options, many groups want to allow options from other books, but tend to stick to the core content because of the sheer mental load of learning, using, and prepping for all these options, especially on the GM. I think they refer to this as bloat in the non-Pathfinder forums on the internet. With Rarity, you have a framework for adding more material without just opening the fire hose. You start with common content for a new group, probably the things labeled as common in the book, and you expand into mastering uncommon and rare content only as it appears in your game. If a particular rare spell hasn't shown up in the game, you don't have to worry about how it might interact with your character's build or your NPC's plot in the same way you might have otherwise. A player can bring some desired uncommon or rare options to the GM who can get a feel for the rules involved and decide when and how to introduce those options into the campaign. If the PC is interested in spells and items from ancient Osirian, and I mean, who isn't? Perhaps the PCs find a new quest that takes them there, or is contacted by an Osirianologist NPC who's willing to trade her Osirian secrets for the PC's help with a different adventure. On the one hand, I will say that one of the things I like the most about Pathfinder 1st Edition is that bloat that a lot of people don't like, because there's just so many options if I want to play a this kind of character or have a that kind of monster, short of just reskinning another monster. It's there, It probably exists. It probably has stats. On the other hand, when I was brand new to tabletop role-playing in general, and I GM'd for a group of 9 people, 9 people in that party, I decided, because The Walking Dead was brand new at the time and still super cool, I guess it's cool now, I'm not caught up. Anyway, I'd throw a bunch of zombies at them. The party had 2 clerics. I didn't know what turn undead was or what hit dice were. The zombies literally were just random numbers thrown together to make some kind of encounter. And when someone says, I'm going to turn undead, I just kind of freeze up because I don't know what that is at all. I believe an experienced GM can roll with pretty much any punch that is thrown at them in terms of rule bloat and feat bloat. But again, this one's kind of for the new players out there, the people who are going to be coming into Pathfinder 2nd Edition with that being their first ever RPG experience, and having something labeled right out the gate as this varied different level of play is pretty good for them. I can't argue with it. Lastly, we've got awesome rewards. Quote, one thing that can be tough in Pathfinder 1st Edition is giving a reward to a PC whose player has already looked up all the options and bought or crafted all the items they really want. Oh, just like me. Okay, sure. Even if some of those items and spells really seemed like they wouldn't be available on the open market. Rarity allows a GM to give rewards that aren't easily available without needing to homebrew a brand new item or ability every time, and allows players who gain rarer options to feel special and important. That's also a really good point that comes up, especially from the point of view of the guy who very blatantly min-maxes a level of rarity on magic items in a given setting is only logical because, and we're not going to turn this into a big economic discussion, mostly because I'm not so good with economics, but how did the player get a hold of everything they needed for that +5 holy, keen, speed, vorpal, great axe, or whatever that they had, or the bracers of armor +8, or their belt of physical perfection +6, and if they're just walking around with this thing that they've crafted themselves, which is certainly very doable in a town the size of, like, say, Sandpoint, who's to say that a bunch of bandits aren't going to try to, kill them and take their stuff? That's the whole, way the world and the economy in a typical RPG setting works, right? Kill the guys, take their stuff, now you have the nice stuff, people are trying to kill you. It kind of harkens back to me also a little bit like Star Wars Saga Edition, if you guys are familiar. If you're not, it's pretty fun. You should totally get your hands on the books. It's a basic D20 system, super similar to this. Right out the gate in that system, you had items that were restricted, items that were common. The point of one of the classes, other than to abuse an ability that gave you way too many credits, was to be able to get black market goods or military grade goods without a huge cost and checks involved and things like that, which is pretty cool. And, also makes sense. Also, it kind of makes it feel, although again, I'm sure that a lot of people probably already do this in Pathfinder 1st Edition in their session zeros, kind of like a game more like Magic the Gathering, and I don't mean that in the sense of an item is rare and here's the RNG loot drops, and again, you get the Holy Avenger and you, my friend, get this ever-burning torch. Haha! But more along the lines of different formats of play, especially in something like PFS, perhaps, might be more equivalent to Magic the Gathering's standard, do some kind of mixed bag of what is rare and what isn't for a draft, etc., 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 with the default play being something like Modern, I suppose. It's been a while since I played anything but EDH or Magic in general. I need a Magic group really bad. Anyway, enough talking about that. Let's actually look at what the rarity means, shall we? Right off the bat, a common item is common if it's ubiquitous in its category, like any of the core races and core classes, such as a longsword, fireball, bracers of armor, and the like. All characters can select common options without restriction, so bracers of armor, really good in 1st edition, probably still good in 2nd edition, especially if you're like a wizard. Longswords are listed as common, but katanas are listed as uncommon, but if you're in a Far East setting, or on Galarion, if you're in Tian Sha or Minkai. And hey, we started doing our coverage of the Dragon Empires a couple weeks ago. Follow this card right up here if you'd like to learn more about that place called Minkai. What is that? I guess Samurai must be there because katanas and stuff, right? Anyway, it does definitely, certainly add to the flavor of the setting. Next up, we've got uncommon items. Quote, something is uncommon if it's a little rarer, but still possible to find or use if you are deeply interested in it. These options are a bit weirder, more complicated, or known to fewer people, so they haven't spread across the world as much. Many uncommon options explicitly become available to a character as they proceed along a path that teaches them about that option. For instance, all domain powers in the playtest are uncommon spells, but clerics are granted access to domain powers through their deities. Characters from a given region, ethnicity, religion, or other group in your world might gain access to uncommon options associated with it. To go back to our previous example, even in a game set in the Inner Sea region of Galarion, if your character hailed from Minkai, you and the GM might decide that you should gain access to Eastern weapons instead of, or in addition to Western ones. Now, we did this all the time with our characters from the Dragon Empires in 1st edition. Greatsword, don't know how to cast that one. I'm going to cast Nodachi, and now I've ruined that whole meme for myself. You get the idea, though. Story events in your game are another way a character could gain access to uncommon options. For instance, it's been mentioned that you would have to get the formula for Drow sleep poison from the Drow. That's because it's an uncommon option. But in your campaign, if your alchemist was captured by the Drow and forced to brew poisons for them, the GM might add Drow sleep poison and other uncommon options to the formulas available to your alchemist. That's pretty cool. The flavor feels pretty good, and it kind of ties items more intrinsically to the class than just saying like, oh, you're an alchemist, you want the poison that's going to shut off the bad guy so the rogue can come up in coup de grace. And again, flavor is real. Next up, we've got the rare items. Something is rare if it's extremely difficult to obtain without doing something special in-world to find it. This means that rare options involve interplay between the player and the GM. Yeah, that means the min-maxers have to actually learn how to roleplay "oh, my life is over," or are granted by the GM directly. There's no way to get access to these through choices in your character build alone. Rare options are spells known only to the ancient rune lords, techniques passed down by the Grand Master of an ancient monastery in the Wall of Heaven Mountains, golem crafting secrets of the Jiska Imperium, or whatever proper nouns are super relevant and important in your setting. Lastly, we have unique. Something is unique, of course, if there's only one of it. Most artifacts are unique, as are certain monsters, like the Sandpoint Devil or Grendel. No artifacts appear in the playtest rulebook, so in the playtest only a few Doomsday Dawn monsters and hazards are unique. Hype intensifies for the game we'll be playing in just under 3 weeks. The first session looks like it'll be going on Friday the 3rd, and hey, good enough time to point it out that if everyone's internet is good, we're probably streaming that over on Twitch, so that'll be sweet. And I totally understand the importance of unique items in games. Unlike rare, unique doesn't necessarily either seem to denote the most powerful forever, and I think unique is probably the most interesting of all the item levels we've seen so far, in and of the fact that a unique item gives the most room, in this one's humble opinion, for roleplay with the character. For example, I never got to play him in 1st edition. I may at some point. A human swashbuckler who is descended from a noble family from Absalom, and his entire purpose for leaving that noble family was to find a simple copper necklace that had been stolen out of his mother's grave. Of course, a copper necklace means nothing to the guy who has rich parents as one of his traits. However, totally unique item creates more room for roleplay, more room for developing the story, while feeding us min-maxers rewards in the case of rare items, I suppose. Yeah, I'll admit it. I have a problem. So, yeah, at first my reaction was a little knee-jerky as far as what was going on here. I wasn't necessarily down with levels of item rarity because it feels like something like cracking open a booster pack of trading cards. And I still feel like a lot of these rules are a little on the arbitrary side for a more experienced group, because a GM can say that anything with a bonus higher than +1 doesn't exist in the world, or firearms don't exist. This definitely opens up the avenue for firearms in later bits of 2nd edition also, by the way. So on and so forth, but again, for new players who are fresh into the world of RPGs, a system like this is really important for them so they have an understanding of it from the get-go. But what do you guys think? Will you be using these tables in your games? Will you be making your own tables? And as always, are we still stoked for Pathfinder 2nd edition? Because if you are, we're giving away a copy of Fantasy Grounds Ultimate Edition right here on the channel. Follow this card right up here to be directed to that giveaway. And remember, patronage at any tier gets you a second entry in all of our giveaways. And now that Hail the Gorilla King is over, and I'm going to try to have it edited and posted in a couple weeks, we will be running some one-shots that were going to be in first edition, but I think honestly it's probably about time to break out the second edition stuff, so we're going to play those one-shots in Pathfinder second edition once I get some more time on my hands. It's also worth noting those one-shots will be exclusive to Black Dragon Gaming's patrons, because you guys are, in fact, the most wonderful people for allowing me to eat food and also do this. I could not appreciate you guys more, but that's all we have for today. Again, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content drops this Tuesday.